Obese people of Reddit. What is something non-obese people don't understand or can't understand? Story 1. As a former obese person, having to pull down your t-shirt to prevent it from lifting up. My non-obese self has well-fitting clothes, and I still subconsciously pull my t-shirt down. That and the glaring looks that you get when you stand in food lines at buffets or at airports. Story 2. When you're fat but people like you, they will divorce your fatness from your character, but they'll still talk negatively about fat people in front of you simply because of their fatness, and you just sort of sit there like, Story 3. As someone who was once obese and now is just a bit overweight, holy is it hard to keep it off. I still want to eat like I did when I was heavier. How people treat you. With active disdain. People glare at you. They scoff at you. They make faces of disgust when seeing you. Random. People feel free to honk at you and yell from their car when you walk alongside the road. The hatred is honestly intense. Story 4. Unless you're a medical professional who specialized in weight loss, there's probably nothing you can say to them about their weight that they haven't already heard or are not already well aware of. Story 5. I have been heavy and light and back again several times, which takes a massive toll on the body on its own, but there you go. I have always mentally been obese, in terms of the space I think I take up in the world. Even at my lightest, which was about 10 pounds north of my ideal weight, I would still check every chair to make sure it's not rickety, still turn sideways to get between things when I didn't need to, still eyeball things like amusement park rides and theater seats because I thought I wouldn't fit comfortably. Obesity has a huge impact on the body but also on the mind. It's why they say things to men like, find a fat girl to have with, shall be grateful. It's also a little bit of armor though. If anyone is going to make fun of me, it's going to be for one thing, being fat. No other insecurities ever get picked on. I'm seen as only being one thing, so I've gotten pretty okay with people pointing it out. Story 6. How you become expected to be the garbage disposal. Oh hey, there's leftover cake from coworker's birthday thing. Well, take it to fat coworker, they'll eat it. Or the last donut or whatever. And then they get all upset when we say no and are like, it'll go to waste. Because I'm already fat. So what does it matter, right? Story 7. The constant need to physically adjust yourself. I wear clothes that fit, but I'm still constantly adjusting my clothes, my body position, etc., just to be comfortable and for my clothes to have a chance of hiding some of what's going on here. My thin friends almost never adjust their clothes and such. Story 8. Just how much internalized shame we carry. If you've seen someone who was really skinny struggle with shame, with thinking that they are too fat and feeling guilty about how they look, that same shame lives inside so many of us. And a lot of us are honestly doing the best we can with subpar healthcare and normalized stigma. Story 9. It is really easy to gain weight over time. You get a sedentary job and you snack occasionally. And in the evening you watch TV or read a book instead of going out. So you weigh 3 pounds more than you did at this time last year. No big deal, right? Now, multiply that by 15 years or so. All of a sudden, it is your 40th birthday. And you somehow weigh 50 pounds more than you did in college. It isn't because you always eat 2 boxes of Oreos a night. You just gained a little, year after year. Also, it is a lot harder to lose weight when you are heavy. When I was 25 and thought I had gained a few pounds, I'd start jogging. Pretty soon, I'd be able to run 2 or 3 miles at a shot, and hey, problem solved. Now, I'm older and heavier, and that means I'm a lot more prone to injury. So I try to work out, and my knees start hurting again, or I aggravate an old foot injury, and it gets frustrating. There are workarounds, of course. I can swim and I can lift weights. But it is all harder than it was when I was young. Story 10. We know we're fat. Like, trust me. I know. Losing it is harder than it was to gain. I know I just ate, but my body is screaming that it's starving. Like down to the lightheaded, nausea symptoms of not eating all day, even though I ate an hour ago. I know a lot of people think drugs like Ozempic and Wegovy are cheating, but Wegovy has literally changed everything. I can eat a healthy portion of food and be satisfied. Story 11. From a woman's perspective, that men don't think you are allowed to say no to them or reject them. There are a lot of men out there who think because you're fat, you're probably lonely, and you should be happy with any male attention you get. Story 12. That for some of us, losing weight is extremely difficult. Some medications can make you excessively hungry. Also, those of us with long-term depression and anxiety issues often use food as a source of comfort. We know it's a poor choice, but in the moment, we don't think of anything but eating something tasty. Having people patronize us actually makes things worse, not better. Story 13. Shopping for clothes has definitely different criteria than skinny people. It's not, ooh, that looks pretty, but ooh, they actually sell this in 5XL. Story 14. Just because we are obese doesn't mean we can't do physical activity. People don't have to act surprised that we can indeed participate. I've heard this from people when I've gone to play soccer or any other sport. I am not the fittest guy playing, but it doesn't mean that I'm going to die if I run around for a bit. Story 15. Being invisible. Also, that you are assumed guilty for anything not just related to food, just because you're overweight. Fat people, especially women, have a far higher guilty verdict in all US courts. Yes, I get that it's ironic that one can be invisible until someone needs to attribute blame. Story 16. How much advice people try to give you. Why eating an apple is so much healthier than eating a cookie. Or why it's so dangerous to be overweight. I know you are worried, and I appreciate it. And I really do know these things. I'm really trying to keep up with you, but I can't run a mile every day. I can walk at my own pace and cut out the things that I can, but it's not working for me the way that it used to. Edit typo. Story 17. You're more in danger of poor medical care when you're obese. Physicians will say lose weight in lieu of testing, diagnostics, or anything resembling medical care. Story 18. How painful being alive is. I'm not obese anymore. Last year I was 375-ish lbs. I was obese then. Living is painful. People would tell me to exercise, that I'd get runner's high, that it's easy. No. Life is pain at nearly 400 bullius. Everything is so hard. I now weigh about 200 kg. Life isn't pain anymore. I still hate exercise, but when I exercise, I get tired or exhausted depending on the intensity. I don't get I want to kill myself borderline injured. Show your obese friends some kindness. Story 19. A lot of people don't understand that food addiction is just like any other addiction. They treat you like you're a disgusting pig. And why can't you just stop eating? Why can't you just eat healthier? Why can't you just be better? But with an addiction like alcohol or heroin, the goal is to completely wean you off of, and then avoid the substance. You can't do that with food. You have to completely relearn how to nourish yourself and see food as fuel. People treat you better when you're thin. If you're fat and you're trying to eat healthy or work out, you still get stared at and made fun of. If you eat unhealthy, you get stared at and made fun of. You can't win. People still think it's completely okay to be mean to and make fun of fat people because it's completely their fault, right? You see it all over Reddit. Binge eating disorder is an eating disorder just like anorexia is. But AN gets much more pity and understanding than bed. Story 20. The guilt that comes when you're seen eating anything at all. The good for you. If you're seen eating a salad, because the only possible reason a fat dude would eat a salad is to lose weight. The existential dread every time you get a random pain in your chest or stitch in your side and think that this could finally be the heart attack. The fact that you can go days or weeks at a time without really feeling bad about being fat, but then all of a sudden one day it's all you can notice about yourself. Summer sucks. It's too hot anyway, but being fat makes it hotter. And then you get worried that despite having perfectly good, if not over-the-top hygiene, maybe you're starting to have fat guy smell. Edit also, the unsolicited advice from incredibly well-intentioned people that don't think we haven't heard it all already or don't know it already. Logic brain versus emotional brain is so misunderstood. Story 21. Fat cells don't disappear due to dieting, they just shrink. They plump straight back up again as soon as they can. It takes at least 7 years of lost weight to lose the fat cells, so a successful diet can easily be 10 years in the making even with the best commitment. No wonder diet plans fail. Story 22. That sometimes medicine makes you gain weight. Like my meds. I'm trying to lose the extra 40 pounds I've put on since cancer. And here I thought chemotherapy would make me skinny. Story 23. I dropped a lot of weight before, and family or friend reunions go one of 3 ways. 1. The person tells you look great and they ask what you did. 2. They'll tell you look so much better and healthier because they were concerned about you. However, the surprising one is 3. They'll insult or complain about the heavier you like it was a completely different person. And 3 isn't coming from people you normally have contentious relationships with or people you have tough love-hard joking relationships with. You expect jokes from those people. It surprisingly comes from the people you were very close to, sometimes ones you never hear speak badly of anyone. The hardest I've heard was, "I'm surprised we were even friends." On a similar note, a friend found out I was much heavier before I met her and she said, "We wouldn't have even been friends." It's those comments that stick with you, even more than the insults from when you were heavier. It's harder because it validates the insecurities you had about your weight, how people perceive you, and how conditional some of your seemingly closest relationships actually are. Thanks to depression and quarantine, I've put some of that weight back on, and those remarks still come to mind when I'm feeling insecure. Story 24. It's usually not as simple as just stop eating. Eating can be an addiction or compulsion. That doesn't mean it's impossible to overcome food issues, but it's harder than a lot of people like to acknowledge. Story 25. How inhuman you feel being obese and how painfully aware of that you are when out in public by the up and down glances from people. The coldness, shortness, and avoidance. Also, unsolicited dieting advice, assumptions after mentioning that you're making lifestyle changes. I've researched fitness health and read tons on obesity metabolic dysfunction, watched all the TED Talks and YouTube gurus, went vegan, keto, did juicing and fasting, got blood tests, and seen doctors, specialists, dietitians. I know a lot, am always learning. I've lost over 100 pounds since December, yet people will chime in. Just cut out soda, just eat less and move more, duh. Try keto, try bariatric procedures, etc. I never drank soda, always been a Hydra homie, also seltzer and herbal tea lover. So I really hate when people assume I slurp down a pallet of 2L sodas daily. I always preferred to eat my calories, not drink them. I do eat less now and move more. My sedentary obesity stemmed from unhealed trauma throughout childhood, bad coping habit of binge eating, severe agoraphobia, have spent years being housebound, former suicide attempts, and a toxic relationship. I'm well aware of what my mentality was to be so unhealthy by being so fat. I needed to face that first, and I finally have. I don't expect people to know or care to know any of that. I hated myself far more than anyone ever could anyway. Story 26. I have lost 180 obese after having a gastric bypass 22 months ago. While the physical changes are awesome, the best thing is that my mind can focus on things other than my weight. I hadn't realized that the thoughts about my weight and food were a constant background chatter. Can I park close enough to the supermarket door that I can get inside without stopping? Or will the calf have some of the chairs left that I can fit in? And so on, all of the time. So much of that has dropped away, yet I wasn't fully aware that it was clogging my thoughts until it was gone. Like only noticing that your radiators were making a noise once the boiler goes off at night and they fall silent. I am now at peace. Story 27. How easy it is to get from normal weight to obese, almost without realizing it or forgetting, until looking for new clothes or seeing photos of yourself. Story 28. Fat people wear their pain on the outside. Lots of thin people walking around with major mental illnesses and addictions, but they aren't visible, so they are perceived as normal. We are judged so much more than anyone else with addiction because it's visible. I'm donating my body to the Mayo Clinic with a letter talking about my lifelong struggle with my weight. I hope they can dissect my brain to find the cause and treat it for future generations. Story 29. That if fat shaming worked, there wouldn't be fat people. Also that, yes, I do exercise 3 to 5 days a week, and I do diet. And I don't just stuff my mouth with junk food day in and day out. Story 30. I doubt anyone will see this, but I'll give it a shot anyway. What you don't understand is that, for many of us, this is a real disease and not some failure of character. I wouldn't have accepted that statement a year ago, but as someone who was 406 obese last April and is now 268 and falling, I have a radically different perspective. I've been big nearly my whole life. I'm 45 today. Last year at New Year's, I decided to just give up. I've tried diets, going to the gym nonstop, hypnosis really, medically supervised high-risk medications, etc. Through all of it, if I lost anything at all, it came right back. Then my doctor told me about a new class of drugs and I brushed it off but decided why not. The day after my first dose, I made a meal and got about third of the way through it and felt full. It was a very odd feeling because I'm here to tell you I don't think I've felt full since I was a teenager. I stopped constantly thinking about food, what I would have for my next meal. I stopped snacking so much. I started getting mobility back that I'd written off as gone forever. Did I suddenly develop willpower out of nowhere? Did I get a new sense of personal responsibility? No to both. The chemical triggers for hunger. My body had been massively overproducing for decades were greatly diminished. Suddenly, dieting was a real possibility. I didn't stop getting hungry. I just suddenly knew when I had had enough and stopped eating. Since then, I've been swimming, biking, working a punching bag, and feeling better than I have in my entire adult life. My entire relationship with food changed because the physical defect I have is finally able to be medically managed. I have to tell you, if it had the metabolism most people are born with, I'd have been out enjoying all of the physical activities I am now for decades. Losing weight is still hard work, but I've always done the hard work. It's just finally accomplishing something for the first time. There's never been an ounce of lazy in me. I have a great career I've had to work very hard for and a loving home. Until now, though, I've had an unmanaged medical condition. I don't go announcing it everywhere, but I'm quite open about how I've been losing weight to those who have asked. You can see the "oh, you're cheating" judgment wash across some faces while they congratulate you and walk off. Would you accuse someone with cancer of cheating for taking an effective medication? If you get a giant cut and go and get stitches, does society look at you and say, well, you really could have just held the skin together and healed yourself? The science is settled. A significant amount of obesity is induced by a legitimate physical problem, not weak-willed laziness. Sure, those people exist, but they're not as common as you've been led to believe. I'm the same person I always have been. The rest of the world can just see it now. Story 31. I'm not obese, but my sturdy friend says you always get this look when boarding a plane in economy, where everyone hopes to God you're not in the seat next to them. Story 32. Having to face the dilemma of choosing the perfect outfit every time you leave the house. A lot of obese people are incredibly self-conscious about their bodies and will wear more bigger clothes to feel more comfortable. This makes you overanalyze the weather and stuff. Layering wrong is going to make you too hot or too cold later on. Story 33. Shaming isn't helpful or motivating. The health of a stranger isn't your business unless A, you are their doctor, B, you're their parent, and they're under 18, or C, you are that person. If you're a doctor, take your patient's concerns seriously no matter their weight. Don't just write them off. Story 34. There is an incredible link between adverse childhood experiences ACE and obesity, especially in women. I'm posting an article about that below. Many people who are obese are that way due to the trauma they went through as a child. I am also posting a link to the 10 questions used to determine someone's ACE score. Scores over 3 correlate with significant increases in a variety of issues in adulthood. My score is 8. I have been doing therapy every 2 to 3 weeks for 2 years, working through trauma, trying to get to a place where I am mentally healthy enough to lose weight. Even my doctor doesn't understand this. Story 35. How hard it is to actually lose weight. It's so tilted towards staying fat. You eat a slice of pizza and think, I'll just run this off. But then you do the math, and it turns out that pizza that took you 3 minutes to eat means you now need to run for 40 minutes. Then there's weight training, which you should do because better muscles burn fat better. But after 2 jobs and 2 kids and errands and chores, by the time you have to actually go to the gym, you are way too exhausted and just want to veg on the couch. And then, even if you do lose the weight, you are doomed to a life of constant vigilance. Because even if you slip for a bit, your old habits and emotions come back to you like a train. Food addiction is real. Story 36. The treatment and judgment from people. Back to when I was obese, people always judged or treated me really bad. Some probably don't even intentional. When I lost a lot of weight, people started treating me way better. Hate to say it, but pretty privilege is a big thing in this world. Story 37. When you are addicted and stop using drugs or curb other bad habits, you stop them completely. Out of your life, never again kind of thing. Imaging trying to stop using cocaine, but not stop using it. Just use a little bit a day, and never use more than just a little bit, despite your body craving it all day. 3 puffs of your cigarette every day, but just 3. You can just stop eating. You have to tempt yourself every day, multiple times, eating only enough to live healthy, while craving much more. Story 38. How hot it is even if people around you are cold. I've lost some weight the last couple of months and had to raise the temp on the AC, which was unexpected. Story 39. I have limited places I can comfortably go due to the width of my. I would love to go to a concert, or a movie, or on a plane, but it literally hurts to wedge my butt into the seat, and I lose circulation in my legs if I can't move. I would love to go on roller coasters or Ferris wheels. I don't lack desire. On top of that issue, using public toilets is extremely uncomfortable. I prefer to use the handicapped stall, and I despise the times I have had to use the regular size stall. Multiply that discomfort by 1,000 if I'm on my period. I feel like I always have to be tidy, smell good, and be super put together to make up for people being inconvenienced by my presence. Story 40. Many of us got this way due to trauma, and we struggle to lose the weight because we aren't healed. We don't choose this. We deserve at most compassion, or at least to not be treated like freaks. Story 41. Was obese 340 and lost 120 lives and got really strong. 1. That we don't want to be obese. It's not something someone who has never been obese would understand. My addiction to food and emotional eating absolutely took over my life. 2. That people treat you differently. I have a level of disdain for people. I'm close to that completely changed the way they spoke to me, spoke about me, or the general interest they showed in me after I got into shape. It's so shitty. Then the real kicker is you actually start to tie your self-worth into your weight because of it. That pressure almost always results in relapses and weight gain, then more massive depression. 3. Clothes don't fit. To be fair, I'm 64 with wide shoulders, so nothing fits no matter what weight I'm at. However, being obese was constantly an issue with clothes. I was super uncomfortable, and would often wear the same 3 or so t-shirts everywhere. I literally wore 5 different shirts out of the house for a full year. I felt humiliated, but they were the only ones I felt somewhat comfortable in. Washing clothes sucked because they'd tighten up. 4. Eating in a booth. Sucks. There were so many places where I couldn't fit in a booth. It's depressing to ask for a table just for that reason. Either that or be horribly uncomfortable and embarrass the entire meal. To all obese individuals starting to lose weight, keep your 4XL shirts and pants. When I lost the 120 lbs, about 60 lubs in, I was more depressed than I was when I started. It was so hard. You'll never forget it. The caloric deficit can do that to you. The one thing that helped the most was that I kept the giant t-shirts I used to have to wear. I put one on one night where I was at rock bottom and ready to give up. It was like a dress. I could not see my progress in the mirror. I was just so used to hating the sight of myself that I couldn't trust my own judgment of my progress. But seeing that shirt and how it was almost comically big helped me so much. Keep that. It's a reminder of where you came from. Fat peoples. Clothes cost more. Story 42. Here's a positive in a thread full of negatives. I am way stronger than you think I am. Every moderately active obese person is stronger than anyone else doing the same level of activity, especially in the legs department. As fat as I am, my calf muscles are shredded. Story 43. I am in pretty good shape, but I used to be obese. I was almost 300 pounds at one point. One can't expect others to embrace obese persons with the same level of attraction or positive affect as typical persons. However, one thing that everyone should understand is that people usually become overweight because they have an emotional relationship to food. Their dietary habits consist of irregular eating and eating as a form of meditation. It feels incredibly calming and enthralling at times to gorge yourself on food. Every thrust of your tongue and crunch of your teeth becomes enjoyable and almost addictive. Think of a bodybuilder honing and focusing on the pump their biceps get, or the moment when they're in the middle of contracting a huge weight and feeling the stretch and bodily stress of that contraction. Every part of that lifestyle deeply enmeshed within your psyche. And the best part of it is that it's a lot easier than everything else that life throws at you. Story 44. We are aware we are obese, overweight. You don't need to point it out. You don't need to help. Most of us know how to lose weight, but our brains sabotage us. Some of us are trying to be healthier, but something gets in the way. I am right now 6'3", second time I have been about that weight. At one point I got down to 225, looked in the mirror and still saw the same fat dude there every morning. Weight loss has to come with the mental as well. Story 45. I have lost 50 lobs and I'm still struggling with losing weight. Every day is an uphill fight that I feel like I'm always losing. It gets really depressing. Story 46. I used to be obese. The worst thing for me was how people looked at me. I try to make friends and the first thing they would do is look at me in disgust. Story 47. I ask thin people if they eat until they are satisfied. Most answer, honestly, yes. I then ask if they have eaten but don't feel satisfied yet. Do they eat more? Most answer yes. Fat people do the same, but the amounts are different. Just eat less is easy to say when eating less satisfies you. Story 48. The fact that sometimes we like to treat ourselves when eating out. The amount of times I've gotten looks and comments when getting some nice food. Or the issues that can happen with the body after losing significant weight. For example, loose skin. Love having to deal with using strong antimicrobial cleaners every day or risk skin infections. Story 49. Not everyone is fat due to food addiction and/or laziness. I let myself get over 300 libs to protect myself from getting assaulted again. Got some therapy and am down 80 libs though. Story 50. It's not really about willpower. Most obese folks have lost more weight than you've ever carried during diets over the years. The way metabolism and neurotransmitters change when you gain weight means that your body will do everything it can to prevent you from keeping weight off once you've gained it. Some of my friends have a hard time stopping after just one drink. For me, having half a glass of wine and stopping there is effortless. I have a hard time stopping when I'm eating something that's rewarding to my brain. For some of my friends, it's effortless. I don't think it exactly comes down to willpower for either of us. It's more about what is easy or hard for your brain to say no to. Story 51. I'm a fat guy. I know I'm fat. It's not surprising to me that I'm fat. I know exactly what it would take for me to lose this weight because I've done it before. But I like food, I hate exercise, I work a sit-down job, and my wife finds me attractive as I am. So there is no present tense incentive for me to lose weight. I know it's going to come back to kill me. I know the sleep apnea or the cholesterol or something is going to end my life a decade or two earlier than if I lost 100 lbs. There is not a soul on earth who wheezes going up a half a flight of stairs that genuinely believes they are not fat or that they are as healthy as a more fit person. Doesn't matter what they post online, hashtag big is beautiful. They know, I know, we all know. Story 52. I've been some flavor of obese or overweight my whole entire life. The best I have ever felt was when I just accepted it and stopped making weight loss dieting exercise a life goal. I eat like I want to, I move when I want to, I wear what I want to, I exist in the world how and when I want to. Sure, I used to bike everywhere and have much better stamina and was smaller than I am now. Did that make people treat me better? No. I still had people honking or screaming obscenities at me when I crossed the street. Sure, there was a time in my life when I used to eat a lot less and look hotter, but was I happier? No. I was a raging alcoholic that would spend money on beer and not food. I was smaller because I was miserable. The best I feel mentally and emotionally is when I forced myself to stop caring. I have ADHD, I have anxiety and depression, I have suicidal ideation, I have financial issues. I accept that I'm fat and see now the only reason I have ever had a problem with it is because other people told me that I should. It's so much more peaceful to just stop. Get off the ride. Sure, people will wring their hands about my health or whatever, but them. It has never been about health. My focus is other aspects of my physical health and my mental health. And I'm sure many people will never understand how that can be an option and have it be a health choice. Conceptualizing my size as anything other than the shape of my body, just like my hair is thick and my eyes are green, has been the best decision I ever made for myself. Story 53. They think that we got obese because we didn't choose ourselves, but they don't understand that some of us did. I'm obese, I relied on food and developed bed because the other option for me was K myself. I did chose myself. I'm alive because I'm fat. You are not a saint because your options were wider. Story 54. That I just completed a sprint triathlon, and I eat pretty well too. I can't remember the last time I ate fast food. People make a lot of assumptions. Story 55. Former fatty here. Telling an obese person they should lose weight is like yelling at a crying kid to stop crying. We know. Your insightful response is not that insightful. Story 56. Fat insulates you from unwanted attention. Check out correlation between abuse and obesity. Sometimes those layers are to keep the evil out. You develop an armor against the insults and fat hate. Ironically, you trade one form of abuse for another. Story 57. People don't respect you when you're fat, especially if you're a woman. No one takes anything you say seriously. You can be the nicest, funniest, smartest person in the room, but all you are to them is fat. Story 58. That bigger clothes sizes are just modifications of smaller sizes and not actually made to fit larger people. How much the obesity classification doesn't cater to different body types. I'm tall, broad, a G-cup with a giant. I have high muscle mass, work out regularly, and eat moderately. Even when I am at my healthiest, I will be considered obese. I think it's very similar to the clothing thing. It's set to a particular body type and doesn't adjust accordingly. Story 59 got into good shape and out of it multiple times in my life already. And the worst thing is how bad people treat you when you are fat. Everybody suddenly loves you when you get thinner. I guess people never leave high school mentally. Story 60. Why do you still keeping eating junk food? I'm sorry to come off as harsh, but I live in a part of the country where obesity is common. And I see so many obese people grocery shopping and getting soda, candy, snacks, all this processed food that is clearly terrible for them. There's not a vegetable to be found. So I guess that's what I'm wondering. Sorry to be downvoted into oblivion, but I'm not trying to be sarcastic. I really want to know what these kind of people think. Story 61. I know that I'm fat. You don't have to remind me, for one. For two, it often doesn't feel like a choice. A lot of the time, I fully understand how weight loss works. I get the physics behind calories in, calories out. I get that weight loss is 90 what you eat and has little to nothing to do with exercise. But the cravings, the urges to eat certain foods, they do not feel like a choice. I'm aware that it is a choice, but when I'm craving something, it's literally every atom of my body that wants it. It's so hard to say no. And I can definitely say that I have cried and been depressed over saying no to a cookie. While weight loss is 90 the food you eat, the mental stuff behind it is even much more massive than that. Story 62. I don't want to eat with you. Eating with people is an invitation to get shamed. Every special occasion I've had, college graduation, birth of children, usually my dad always points out that you did a good thing, but you're still fat. Maybe you could work on that now. Story 63. That a lot of you are probably technically obese if you calculate your BMI. I would consider myself to be a pretty standard dad bod overweight guy, but if you stick the numbers in obese, Story 64. People always just tell you to exercise more and eat less. And I often want to strangle people who tell me to exercise more. It's because I already exercise 7 days a week, 3 to 4 hours per day. Was the fastest short-distance female runner in school and represented school in 3 different sports, athletics, judo, and basketball. This means intensive training. On top of this, I play soccer daily after school and inline skate weekends. and score straight A's in all fitness tests. What I mean by fitness test is they test you on long distance ascent speed, short distance speed, number of sits-up and pull-ups you can do, etc., and how far you can jump. Obviously, scoring A means the toughest scores to reach and takes training to get there. Basically, my teachers who already know I maxed out my exercise activities will still keep being bothered by my overweight and keep telling me to just stop eating too. It's because we had compulsory fat camp in school and I qualified for fat camp, and the teachers was embarrassed that their fastest female runner is fat, BMI overweight, and about 40 lakabs fatter than most girls my age. I ran 100 meters in 13 secs. Was the best in my school back then. It was frustrating my whole life that just because I was fat, I kept being told that I didn't work hard enough on the exercise part. And then I would go home to parents and relatives who keep asking me, why are you so fat when you exercise so much? That always made me cry nonstop. And I thought they were all so cruel about it. I was always so embarrassed to go for my nationals, especially for athletics, because all the girls were stick thin, my thighs were like elephant 3 times larger, and girls would look at me like WTF was I doing at nationals? It was downright humiliating and embarrassing, and I got forced to go even though I declined. I got threatened to take off the b-ball team if I don't step up and represent school in athletics. I feel better in b-ball because you got these tall girls, who are larger by default of being tall, bigger bones and all. But in athletics, everyone was stick thin, and I feel I look like I don't belong there. Recently, my uncle scoffed in disbelief that I do trail runs and conquered a few mountains I mentioned. It's because of my weight. I get this all the time. It's like all that matters is that you were fat. None of these guys cared about my health. Story 65. I know I'm fat. I don't need to be reminded. I'm doing the best I can on this airplane. I bought a window ticket so I can get that extra 2-3 inches along the wall and am over there as far as I can be. And I'm petrified you're going to be upset that I might be touching you. I'm so sorry. I'm trying my best. I'm trying to be on my side.